And a couple of minutes later, you can hear the warning being shouted down the corridors.
Yeah.
And this big Alsatian just comes walking in where I was, looks up at me. And the next thing I know, this thing is slobbering, gnawing almost at the 6 foot up, trying to take chunks out of me.
Hello, welcome to another broadcast of the podcast series Life After the Pips, about public service employees, how they're approaching the job, how they're approaching retirement, and any funny stories. And I'm delighted to have an in-person appearance from the one and only Mark Thornton. Welcome, Mark. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here.
Mark, I know I've known Mark for more years than I care to mention, as a colleague and a boss within the police service. But now Mark is an author as well, which we'll come on to discuss in a minute. So thanks for coming along, Mark. What I would say is, what we're going to do is just discuss a couple of things. Once I get you talking and once I get you warmed up, I'm sure you'll be fine.
Okay.
I know this is bringing you out your comfort zone a little bit, but just bear with us if you can, please. So, what motivated you to join the police then, Mark?
Honest answer to that, the Sweeney and Starsky Hutch. They're the two things that, as a child, were in the television, were in my mind's eye. When I look back at those episodes now, they weren't necessarily the best role models for joining the police, but that pull of something with a blue light on, televised. A little bit later on, I probably got into a more moral position of wanting to do good and help people. But they were the first two things.
And can you just give us a little bit of a flavour of what your service was, where you worked, and any progression?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Geordie by birth, moved from Tyneside down to Teesside, joining Cleveland Police 1989. I didn't really know much about the borough, didn't know a great deal about the area at all. Stayed in a police hostel for the first 2 years. I knew my way around the South Bank area, which is where I was stationed, first station, and knew my journey back up to Tyneside, because I always intended just to move back to Northumbria. Mm-hmm. Things didn't chart that way, and I stayed for my full 30 years, achieving the rank of superintendent by the time I finished, alongside being a Gold Public Order Commander, Tactical Firearms Commander for 12 years, Force Duty Officer, and all those other things that went with that rank, but still being, by then, a leader of the people that were doing the job.
Yeah. I remember you being a Force Duty Officer on a number of occasions, and I always got the impression that you might turn around and say, "Oh God, Galloway's on in Middlesbrough. I know there's going to be issues," But
that's exactly what I used to say, Dave.
Yeah. I had heard it from other sources, so don't worry about revealing any sources. So when you first joined the police, then, so you'd come as you say, a Geordie, so you were co-opted into the smoggy land.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, what issues did that create for you when you first joined?
The lack of local knowledge, and genuine local knowledge. I didn't know the schools, the background. I hadn't grown up in the environment, down to the football team and that rivalry of North East clubs. It was all new. But I think that also helped, because I wasn't being focused on anything or distracted by anything. I just took everywhere and everybody for who they were. On the right side of the law or the wrong side of the law, it mattered not to me. This was the job I was going to undertake, and I had no bias in that regard.
Oh, good. And when you first joined then, were you already a family man, or were you...
No. I mean, I was with the girl that I've ultimately married and stayed with all those years. But, to start with, I was that relationship distance of sort of 45 mile, and mix that in with shift work, and living in the hostel, did mean that, we didn't see a great deal of each other. And as you recall, we only got one weekend off in 4. So, you made the best use you could of that one weekend off.
Well, was there a major difference then between your sort of knowledge of Newcastle area, Geordie land, as you so quaintly put it, and South Bank? Was it a bit of a culture shock?
To be fair, no. I was brought up in the West End of Newcastle, just opposite where the Metro Centre is now. And Scotswood, Elswick, which is where my parents were brought up in, was deprived. Right next to Vickers, a lot of heavy engineering, so that link was made. My dad had worked in the shipyards, so I knew around sort of that, the steel and the likes. The petrochemical industry, that was new to us.
Yeah.
But the actual urban grittiness of Teesside, and I don't mean that in any disparaging way. It's been a hub of industry for years. Tyneside the same, Wearside the same. So those bits were quite natural for them to move into.
So you started off in South Bank, which is now part of the Redcar and Cleveland Command. Where did you go move from there, Mark?
So I did my first 2 years there. My first footbeat was in Teesville. Progressed through my shifting experience on there, and then I had 2 years with Hartlepool on a support van. I didn't really know Hartlepool again, so I was coming to a brand new town, with a great group of men and women there. And then, having left the support van and a bit of time on shift, I was fortunate enough to get onto my trainer's course, June 1995, and that probably changed the whole of my career. Had I not gone on that trainer's course, I think I would have probably finished as a constable, been very comfortable as a constable doing stuff. But 15 weeks at Harrogate really stretched my mind, and I came out of training a really passionate trainer. And I was very fortunate to be able to blend operational life and training life all the way through my career, all the way to the senior ranks.
I must admit, when I did my introductory podcast, I said very much the same thing. That was a pivotal point for me going into training and learning those extra skills, not just about teaching, but how to deal with people, how to deal with the officers when they were having welfare issues and things like that. So what would you say, apart from training them, from an operational point of view, what was the best place you worked?
It wasn't a place, it was a discipline.
Right.
And I have to parallel the two. And that was being that firearms commander and working in the public order world. I'd never carried a firearm. In fact, right back from day one, I said I didn't want to. Making Chief Inspector, 2009, put on a course to become a tactical firearms commander. In truth, not fully understanding what that meant. And 2 weeks later, fully understanding what that meant and the implications. Meant that for the next 10 or 12 years, I had a different outlook on operations. Alongside that, I'd grown up in the public order world. So I'd ran as a constable, carried shield as constable, been in the thick of it. And towards the end of my service, as I say, I was a gold public order commander, very strategic in my outlook. Both of those disciplines were where my passions were in terms of operational policing. And I was fortunate enough to carry them on for years and years and years. I couldn't affiliate myself with the world of CID and detectives because that wasn't for me. But this uniform stuff and those two disciplines were, and I thoroughly enjoyed them.
I suppose that was one of the things for me because I never did any CID. I did attachments, but I was never posted to CID. But it was never something that was, I don't know why, and I can't put my finger on it and say I didn't do CID because of this. I was just in the mind that I felt more like a police officer, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way, being in uniform. I
can fully understand that, and I do think the job does allow you to explore lots of different avenues. Some of you enjoy, some you don't enjoy, some you fall in love with. But for me, those two not only allowed me to do some great stuff. That's not true. Allowed me and my colleagues to do some great stuff. They took me into some great places as well, operationally and in terms of the background work that goes on with this stuff.
Oh, good. So coming from the Newcastle area then and coming down to Teesside, what impact did that have on you personally from a well-being point of view to start off with?
I think it sounds strange, certainly alien now, when you say to people joining the job, or indeed those who've not had a great deal to do with it, you had to ask for permission as to where you're going to live. You'd had a home visit by the recruiting team, and Northumbria had come and done mine. So I didn't have a choice. I was going into 40 Yarm Road. That's where the police hostel was, and that's where I was going to live. I had to apply to come out of it. So those bits and bobs over those first few months, that was just the way it was. When my then girlfriend, now wife, went to my first house, we were looking in newspapers, because that's where you search before the internet. We were looking at estate agents' windows, not really knowing the environment that we were maybe going to have to put a form in and say, can we live there? Just to get a form come back saying, no, you can't.
No, you can't.
So I think they were the big changes for me in terms of I lived in this bubble of policing when I was off duty.
Yeah.
You know, you finished shift and you went back and you were amongst colleagues.
Yeah.
You weren't going home as such.
Yeah.
Until I left the hostel. And then my then girlfriend joined me. For first home.
Oh, good. Dare I ask where your first house was?
You can. It was right next to the railway lines in Billingham. So we had the old A19 running over the back of our house, and the train lines running the bottom end of the street. Neither of which were very good for a shift worker. You know, the busyness of roads and train lines, particularly with some of the stuff that was being moved in and out of the heavy industry. But we're there for a couple of years. Loved it. First home. Loved it. And then we moved on to Ingleby Barwick and stayed there for a couple of years.
Yeah, I remember you saying just a minute ago about a home visit. I remember the inspector that did my home visit, and all through their career and my career, and I still see that person now, they're adamant that the only reason why I got in was because my then wife had done some lovely cakes for him. So it was obviously a good tool to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So as you've progressed in your career then, Mark, and you've gone up through the ranks, how differently did you approach things from your own well-being point of view? What impact did that have?
Badly, I think would be the honest answer to it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a boss. At no point back in those days at South Bank did I have any aspirations. And it just as I was leaving South Bank, I remember an acting sergeant came on to shift. And they didn't do a very good job of it, in my view.
Yeah.
They'd come from another police station, which was the way they were on a different timeline of shifts. So you didn't really get to know them. And I thought they just didn't do a good job. And I kind of looked over and went, I can do that. And that was my inspiration and motivation to go forward. I made sergeant in '97. I did particularly well in the promotion rounds. Promoted quite early, and therefore with only 8 years service. A little, not fast-tracked, but a little bit young in service, some might have argued. And then I continued and wanted more and more of the leadership piece, probably to the detriment of a little bit of my health and indeed time with the family. Right. Because I would take that job on, I would volunteer for this. I'd want to do a bit more of that because I knew those experiences were going to get me further up or I hoped they were going to get me further up the rank chain.
Brilliant. And when you were Silver Commander then, bearing in mind that you had the responsibility for the whole force area, how did you approach that? Because I'll let you answer the question and I'll give you my view if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that, knowing that you were probably the ultimate, yes, you had a gold commander to rely on if required, but you were the first port of call for people like me to say, help.
Yeah. In time, I relished it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, in those early times, I was chief inspector outside of Redcar and Cleveland Operations Department or inside Operations Department. I had a response team that I looked after and a little bit of specialist ops. But I was given the force to work with for those days and nights. And yes, gold was sitting at the end of the phone, but they weren't out. And it did strike you that if it was going on, you were going to have something to do with it. Maybe it's only just to keep things right or have an overview. So it was quite daunting to start with. But the more I did it, the more I relished it, the more I enjoyed it. And it'd be interesting to hear what you said there, but the more I felt I added value to support those people who were doing it. I liked to be out and about on the ground. I liked to spend the hours at work. Not to be a hero of time on duty, but to be somebody there to say, you don't need to worry about waking me up. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be somewhere on duty at some time.
Well, from my point of view, as much as we had a laugh earlier on and we said, you must have looked and thought, Galloway's on in Middlesbrough. One of the first things I did when I came on a night, particularly a night shift, was who's the Silver Commander. You knew what sort of a night you were going to have. And it was reassuring because I knew, and in them days, in fairness, a lot of them did come out and a lot of them did visit the stations and things like that. But I think we always had quite a good working relationship. And I remember a couple of incidents that I had to call on you for and stuff like that, and appreciated the support. So it's important. It's important.
I definitely think it is important. I think if I cast my mind back to my early years, no, I wasn't going to be seeing a boss on the streets. And I don't mean this disparagingly against any of those, that the generation that were, but I don't think we did see a lot of the senior officers late into the night. Those that schooled me in that silver role were encouraging me to be out and about, to visit every station, to get into every custody suite. Not necessarily to be inspecting, just to say hello and just to say, as a cadre of bosses, we care.
And it certainly the feedback from the officers on the shift as well. Oh, it's good to see the bosses out in the dark.
Yeah,
Things like that. You know, so you'd be surprised how many people pick up on it. So let's move on then, Mark, because you know, you got all the way up to superintendent, you goal commander here, there, and everywhere. However, what were your thoughts when you were approaching your retirement?
It's really interesting being on the other side of the fence, starting to think about answering that. And I've driven it today expecting a question like that. My thoughts for retirement started when I had about 5 years servicing, because working in the training school, maybe 8 years service, but working in the training school, I was asked one day to shadow and help and facilitate a pre-retirement course.
Right.
And that lasted about 3 days. And so I brought in every speaker, I warmed the audiences up on a morning, made sure, and everybody was ready for it. So I was listening to things that probably most officers don't get to hear until they've got 25 years service.
Right.
And it really, really helped me. Being a part of the National Superintendents Association, I also was starting from about 24, 25 years in to help facilitate these retirement seminars. And I used to go and sit and listen to everyone I could, because I knew it was going to be such a big thing. Good. Retiring at 49 years of age, there's a whole wealth of life ahead of me, I hope. Find some wood to touch. So what are you going to do in that time? What are you going to spend your... You've searched to be part of this thing called the police, and then all of a sudden the umbilical cord's cut, and you're not anymore.
It's funny because between the three of us and a previous guest, Dean, we've all said the same thing. You used the term umbilical cord. I use the term comfort blanket. And it is that approach in the... Do you think you were institutionalised, Mark?
Oh, absolutely. Even down to wearing black socks every day. You know, that's what you had to wear. And potentially back in those early days, somebody might pull your trouser leg up to see that you're wearing black socks.
Absolutely.
So yes, I was institutionalised. Added to which, and I'll refrain from my language, but I was job. You asked about well-being. I loved it. I wanted more of it. You didn't mind getting up at whatever o'clock to answer the phone because you're on call. And it all drifts away very, very suddenly. You know, it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
The memories haven't, but the practicalities have.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you actually walked out the door for the last time and you'd handed your warrant card in, Mark, what did you do?
Moved house and left the region. And that the two literally happened at the same time. But my wife and I, having come from Tyneside, the only affiliation that we had to Teesside was the girls growing up. They'd both gone off to university, so we had no anchor, no physical anchor. We talked about moving back up to Tyneside, but the girls are going off and doing their own thing, so we relocated down to South Yorkshire, and that was brilliant for us because we were setting up a new life and a new environment in a new world, a bit like going to South Bank. I didn't know where B&Q was. I didn't know what the best pubs were. All of that stuff. So at 49, what did I do? I kept on loading vans and moving to this new home.
Oh, brilliant. Just a couple of things left to talk about, if possible, Mark, if you don't mind. Now, I noticed that you've strategically placed your little book there, which is a book that you've obviously just written, Mike 223, and it's the journey from a Tyneside teenager to a Teesside police constable. What motivated you to write the book?
The desire to tell the story to my two girls, who weren't even twinkles in eyes, at that time in life. There's lots of stories that we can tell in the pub or when we come home. I've tried to make the book that sort of, some mothers do have them, meets Dixon and Dock Green. And some of the capers that I experienced in the first couple of years, pointing fun at me, not the job, pointing fun at me. But the motivation was kind of to say to the girls, look, that's what your dad was doing in his early 20s. And they love it. They really appreciate that it's been done for them.
Good.
Hopefully others might find it entertaining as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you know when I've had the chance to read it, because I am getting a copy of it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So leading on from the book then, and you talked about stories, and you talked about looking at yourself and really having a dig at yourself. Self-deprecation is so, it's quite a big thing for people, isn't it? You know, it almost becomes a norm. So can you give me a flavour of a couple of stories that would entertain?
Yeah. Well, I hope that entertain. No, funniest to me, I've never been good with dogs. I've never been good around dogs. Bearing in mind, towards the end of my service, I had specialist ops and was responsibility for the dog. I had this the dog section.
Good.
But I remember at Gilbrook School, intruder alarm going off. This is with my tutor, turning up, searching the outside of the premises, religiously going tapping all the windows to make sure that all the glass was still intact for every window. Coming back around the front of the school, it's not broken into, it hasn't been broken into, yet the alarm's going off. And dog section were just pulling up. And again, I won't name the handler of the animal. But my tutor thought it was a really good idea to exercise the dog with me. So the dog stayed in the back of the van. The dog handler was very keen to get the dog to have a find. So I was escorted into the changing rooms, asked to lie on this, it felt like 6 inches worth of lockers at about 6 foot up in the air, and told, do not move until I come back for you. And a couple of minutes later, you can hear the warning being shouted down the corridors. And this big Alsatian just comes walking in where I was, looks up at me, turns around and walks off. And I think, stupid dog. What I learned was that it had changed his breathing then. It went back with handlers to say, I've found it. Another warning comes in, and the next thing I know, this thing is slobbering, gnawing almost at the 6 foot up, trying to take chunks out of me. Minutes later, when I'm called down, he's saying, stroke it, pat it, and I'm like, really? But I had to learn to get to know dogs really quickly.
That's great. Any other quick stories you've got there, Mark, just to finish off with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you learn by experience, don't you? Experiential learning and all of that malarkey. Recovering a stolen vehicle from a field just outside of Gisborough on a winter's night, muddy. It was a Ford Sierra, and it's still with my tutor constable, which shows you what tutors maybe were like in the day. Told to push the car from behind to help the guy who was going to put on the winch and drag it off the road and keep on pushing. And I was told where to stand because of the clots, which was right behind the rear wheel on a car that was rear wheel driven. And all I can remember was this rain got heavier and heavier until I got at the headlights, and that rain wasn't rain, and it was mud, and I was from top to bottom. So that was a change of uniform before the end of the shift.
Oh, you could have been set up even worse and put in front of the inspector. Look at the state he's turned up.
That wouldn't have been far from the pale, but that type of thing happened, didn't it?
One final question then. So, if you were to speak to somebody who was approaching the retirement, what is the best piece of advice you would give them?
Whatever time it is in terms of service, get yourself on a pre-retirement seminar. I can remember when we were putting them on towards the end of my time, and some of my superintendent colleagues would say, I haven't got time for that today. And they'd booked onto it and then they booked off. That is your day. That's your opportunity. It's your few hours to think about your future. It's not about the job. The job will continue. The job will continue after you're retired. So the more planning and preparation you can do for that umbilical cord, as I called it earlier on, being cut, the more you can get your head around it. The monetary issue, the pension, very important. But you've got to fill about 3,500 hours a year with whatever you were doing beforehand. So my bit of advice would be get yourself on a pre-retirement.
I lied when I said I had one more question. Very last question, Mark. Would you do it again?
The pre-retirement seminar or the whole policing service?
The whole policing thing.
In a blink, I'd say yes, please. Up days, down days. Up weeks, down weeks. But overall, brilliant career. Life's changed. The career has changed. The job's not broken. the job was just different. And yeah, I'd give it a go tomorrow.
Brilliant. Well, Mark, thank you very much for your time. It is greatly appreciated. And I wish you every success with your what is going to become a best-selling book.
Oh,
And thank you for my copy. Great to see you.
thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much. Thank you.